I will never forget that Tuesday in April in Valencia. The sun was shining with that Mediterranean intensity so characteristic of our coast, and I was finishing organizing the documents for my next meeting at the office. As a project manager at a local consulting firm, my mornings were usually quite hectic, but that day seemed especially calm. I had even had time to make a latte and sit on my little balcony, watching the orange trees down the street begin to bloom. My cell phone vibrated on the glass table. It was Miguel, my husband of 6 years. It wasn't unusual for him to call me in the mornings. We used to coordinate our schedules to have dinner together at home or meet for lunch at a restaurant near the center. But this time, something about the vibration seemed different to me, as if the phone itself sensed what was to come. "Hello, darling." I answered, maintaining that cheerful tone I always used with him. The silence on the other end of the line lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough to make my stomach instinctively clench. "Carmen." Her voice sounded distant, as if she were speaking from the bottom of a well. "I can't go on with this." I stood still, with the coffee cup halfway between the table and my lips. The next words left his mouth like shards of ice, each one colder than the last. He explained to me, with a coldness that I had never perceived from him before, that our marriage was over. There were no detailed explanations, no elaborate apologies. Just "it's best for both of us," before hanging up, leaving me alone on my balcony, the coffee going cold and the world falling apart around me. The first few minutes after the call were like being in a silent movie. I saw the cars passing by on the street, the people walking to their jobs, the pigeons pecking between the tiles of the nearby square, but everything seemed unreal, as if I were observing life through a fogged-up glass. My mind was trying to process what had just happened, desperately searching for signs I had missed, conversations that could have foreshadowed this moment. Had our dinners in recent months been different? Had their good morning kisses become shorter, more distant? Had the laughter shared in front of the television diminished without me realizing it? I mentally reviewed our last vacation in Alicante, just 2 months ago. We had walked along Postigat Beach, eaten in small restaurants in the old town, and planned to renovate our kitchen. Everything seemed normal, even happy. With shaking hands, I dialed Anna's number, my best friend since college. She worked as a teacher at a nearby high school and had always been my anchor in difficult times. He answered on the third ring. "Anna." My voice broke before I could say anything else. "Carmen. What's wrong?" His tone immediately changed from cheerful to worried. "Are you okay?" I told him everything between sobs, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Anna listened in silence, only interrupting occasionally to assure me that she was there, that I was not alone. "I'm going there right now," he finally said. "Don't leave home." "But you have classes." "My students can survive a day without grammar." "You need me more." While waiting for Anna, I tried to keep myself busy. I cleaned up the cup of coffee I had inadvertently spilled, changed my smeared makeup, and called the office to let them know I wouldn't be coming. Mercedes, my secretary, didn't ask questions when I told her I was unwell. Maybe my shaking voice was enough of an explanation. The doorbell rang 40 minutes later. Anna entered like a whirlwind, carrying a bag from the supermarket on the corner. Without saying a word, he hugged me tight, and that's when I really allowed myself to burst into tears. "I brought nougat ice cream," he said as he headed to the kitchen. "And those chocolate cookies that you like so much. And a bottle of wine, although it's 10 in the morning, but I think today we can make an exception." I sat on the couch while Anna moved around my kitchen with the familiarity of years of friendship. I watched her take out spoons, open the ice cream, and pour 2 glasses of red wine. At any other time, I would have laughed at the surreality of the situation, 2 30-something professionals eating ice cream and drinking wine mid-morning on a weekday. Was there any sign? Anna finally asked, sitting next to me. "Anything you might have noticed?" I shook my head, digging the spoon into the ice cream. Everything seemed normal. Last Sunday we even went to eat at his parents' house, as always. His mother made paella. Miguel talked about wanting to change cars. My voice broke as I remembered the everyday, the normal thing that it had been everything. Have you tried calling him? He's not answering. I've sent him some messages, but they appear unread. I took a sip of wine, feeling the heat of the alcohol spread down my throat. I don't understand, Anna. 6 years together. How can someone end a marriage with a phone call? Anna handed me a tissue. Men can be cowards when they want to. Remember my cousin Javier? He left his 5-year-old girlfriend with a WhatsApp message. But this was different. Miguel and I were not high school sweethearts. We were a married couple. We had built a life together, we had plans, shared dreams. Our house was full of photos of happy moments, our wedding in the Church of Santa Catalina, the trip to Rome for our 3rd anniversary, Christmas with our families. Hours passed between conversations, tears, and memories. Anna stayed with me all day, canceling her appointments and making sure I ate something more substantial than ice cream. When the sun began to set, turning the Valencia sky in orange tones, my cell phone rang again. My heart skipped a beat thinking it could be Miguel, but the number that appeared on the screen was that of my mother-in-law, Dolores. For a moment, I hesitated to answer. We had always maintained a cordial relationship, although we never became as close as she would have wanted. But I needed answers, and maybe she could give me some explanation. I didn't know that that call was going to change everything again, that the words I was about to hear would transform my pain into something completely different. I looked at Anna, who nodded in support, and answered the phone. What followed was the beginning of a story that neither of us could have imagined. That April morning in Valencia, when the sun was shining and the orange trees were blooming, oblivious to the drama that was about to unfold in our lives. With a trembling hand, I held the phone as Dolores' voice echoed on the other end of the line. His tone, which I had always found slightly condescending, now exuded a cruel joy that chilled my blood. "Carmen, dear," he exclaimed with an exaggerated enthusiasm that turned my stomach. "I just found out the news. Finally my Miguelito made the right decision." Anna, who was still sitting next to me on the couch, noticed how my face was losing color. She squeezed my hand supportively as I put the phone on speaker, wanting her to witness what was happening. "What do you mean, Dolores?" I asked, trying to maintain my composure even though I felt like my world was falling apart for the second time in the same day. His laughter echoed through the speaker, a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "Oh, dear, don't act innocent now. I always knew you weren't enough for my son. A simple employee of a consulting firm. Miguel needs someone on his level, someone who really understands the business world." As I listened, my mind traveled to all those Sundays at her house in the exclusive neighborhood of El Carmen, where she presided over the table as if she were a queen at her court. I remembered all the times he had subtly criticized my way of dressing, my Valencian accent that he considered too popular, even the way I cooked paella. "No," she continued, without waiting for my response, "I always told Miguel that he could aspire to something better. Someone like Victoria, for example. Do you remember her? The Mendoza's daughter, that elegant lawyer who came to dinner last month." Suddenly, everything started to fall into place. The casual dinners with old family friends, the constant mentions of other, more appropriate, women, the knowing glances between mother and son that I had chosen to ignore. 6 years, Dolores continued, savoring each word as if it were a fine wine. "I don't even know how he lasted so long with you. Although I must admit that you were quite useful while it lasted. At least you kept the house presentable, although you never learned to fold napkins properly." Anna looked at me with a mixture of horror and anger, gesturing for me to hang up the phone. But something inside me wanted to hear more. I needed to understand how far this family conspiracy went. "And that way of dressing of yours, dear," Dolores continued, clearly enjoying her moment. Always so basic. Do you remember the Christmas party last year? That red dress you wore, you looked like a saleswoman at El Corte Inglés. I took a deep breath, remembering the dress in question. It had cost me half a salary and I had chosen it specifically to impress Miguel's family. Now I realized how absurd it had been to try to win his approval. But don't worry, she continued with false sweetness, I'm sure you'll find someone else, suitable for you. Maybe a merchant from the Central Market, or one of those waiters from the bars where you so like to hang out with your friends. Each word was like a slap, but I remained silent, allowing him to continue speaking. Ana had taken out her phone and was recording the conversation, a decision that would later prove invaluable. And please, Dolores added with a theatrical sigh, don't try to contact Miguel. He's already suffered enough having to put up with your mediocrity all these years. Now he needs space to rebuild his life with someone of his kind. As I listened to it, my mind began to work in a different way. Every insult, every derogatory comment, became a piece of a puzzle that I could finally see complete. It wasn't just Miguel who had decided to end our marriage, it was a whole plan orchestrated by his family, probably from the beginning. Do you know what's the funniest thing, Dolores? I finally spoke, surprising myself with the calmness in my voice. That all these years, I really believed that behind your critical mother-in-law facade there was a decent person. And how naive I was. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. Clearly, he wasn't expecting me to respond. Don't you dare talk to me like that, he hissed, losing his condescending tone for the first time. Who do you think you are? I am the woman who has been putting up with your manipulations for 6 years, I replied, feeling a new strength growing inside me. But that's over. Laugh all you want now, Dolores. We'll see who laughs in the end. Are you threatening me? His voice rose an octave. You? A nobody from a random neighborhood. No, Dolores. I'm just informing you. And with that, I hung up the phone while she was still talking. Ana looked at me with a mixture of pride and concern. Carmen, that was intense. I got up from the couch and walked to the window. The sun was setting over Valencia, turning the sky an intense red that seemed to reflect the rage burning inside me. Down on the street, life continued as if nothing had changed, but I knew everything was different now. Do you know what's the worst, Ana? I said, without looking away from the window. That all these years, I tried so hard to be what they wanted. I changed the way I dressed, I learned their stupid rules of etiquette, I even took golf lessons because it was what people at their level did. Ana came over and put a hand on my shoulder. But not anymore, right? No, I confirmed, feeling cold determination replace the pain. Not anymore. We spent the next few hours planning. Ana, who in addition to being a teacher was an expert in social networks, helped me document everything. We saved the recording of the call in several safe places, took screenshots of previous messages that now took on new meaning, and began building a record of all the events of the last 6 years. What are you going to do? Ana asked as we organized the information. I sat at my desk and turned on my laptop. First, I'm going to call a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but the best one I can find. And then, a smile that was not at all cheerful spread across my face. Then I'm going to show you exactly who this nobody from some random neighborhood is. That night, after Ana left, I was left alone in the apartment that until that morning I had considered my happy home. I looked at the photos on the walls, the memories of a life that now seemed like an elaborate lie. But instead of crying, I started planning. He had resources that neither Miguel nor his mother knew about, secrets that he had kept not out of shame, but out of caution. And now it was time to use them. While the city fell into the silence of the night, I worked. I sent emails, made calls, organized documents. Every insult from Dolores, every moment of humiliation I had endured in silence, became fuel for my determination. At 3 in the morning, I finally allowed myself to rest. But before I went to sleep, I looked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at me was not the same one who had woken up that morning. There was a steely determination in his eyes, a silent promise of justice. "We'll see who laughs in the end, Dolores," I whispered to my reflection. "We'll see." While Valencia slept, I stayed awake in my study, a small space that I had turned into my personal sanctuary over the past few years. The dim light of my desk lamp illuminated the walls, where my carefully framed diplomas hung: computer engineering from the University of Valencia, a master's degree in software development from the Polytechnic University of Madrid, and several certificates of specialization in emerging technologies. Diplomas that Miguel had never really bothered to look at, assuming they were simple decoration. "My wife, the consultant," I used to say at family dinners, as if my job were a minor hobby. What he and his family never knew was that while they were putting me down, I had been building something much bigger. It all started 3 years ago, during one of those weekends when Miguel claimed to be working on important cases at the firm. I knew he was probably at the golf club with his friends, but instead of complaining, I took advantage of that time to develop my first significant project: business management software specifically designed for small and medium-sized companies in the Valencian tourism sector. I opened my computer and typed in the password that gave me access to my real professional life. The screen lit up showing the control panel of Tech Valencia Solutions, my company. The numbers didn't lie: more than 200 active clients, an annual turnover that exceeded €2 million, and a team of 15 developers who worked remotely from different parts of Spain. If only Dolores knew that her simple consulting employee was actually the CEO of one of the most promising tech companies in the region, I muttered to myself, allowing myself a small smile. But that wasn't the only secret he kept. I minimized the company window and opened an encrypted folder on my external hard drive. There, meticulously organized by date, were all the documents he had been compiling about the activities of Miguel and his law firm. It all started by chance, about a year ago. Miguel had left his laptop open one night, and an email caught my attention. It was a conversation with a client that mentioned special accounting adjustments and alternative billing channels. My training in systems allowed me to understand that something was not right. From that moment on, I started paying more attention. I quietly installed monitoring software on our home network, justifying it to myself as a security measure. What I discovered chilled me: Miguel and his law firm were involved in an elaborate tax evasion and money laundering scheme. I opened one of the most recent files, an email between Miguel and an important client, the owner of a hotel chain on the Costa del Sol. The language was carefully cryptic, but to someone who knew what to look for, the message was clear. They were using a network of shell companies to funnel money out of Spain. "Dear Mr. Rodriguez," I read quietly, "we have proceeded as agreed with the restructuring of assets through our subsidiaries in the Cayman Islands. The garden operation is ready to proceed as soon as we receive your confirmation." He had dozens of similar emails, all carefully backed up and dated. There were also photographs: Miguel meeting with clients in discreet places, exchanging briefcases, meetings in lonely parking lots. Everything documented, everything saved. I got up and poured myself a glass of red wine, a Rioja I had been saving for a special occasion. And what occasion is more special than the day I decided to take control of my life? As I savored the wine, I remembered all the times Miguel had disparaged my work. "The business world is complicated, honey," he used to say in that condescending tone that he now recognized as identical to his mother's. "You dedicate yourself to your computer things." My computer things had built a company worth millions, and more importantly, they had given me the tools to uncover their web of lies. The sound of a notification brought me out of my thoughts. It was an email from Laura, my development director, informing me about the latest project we were preparing, a financial management platform with integrated artificial intelligence. The irony was not lost on me. While Miguel's law firm used technology to hide money, I used it to create real value. I approached the window of my study. The lights of Valencia flickered in the distance, and I could see the silhouette of the city of arts and sciences silhouetted against the night sky. To think that for years I had allowed myself to be made to feel small, insignificant, when in reality I had been building something extraordinary. I went back to my desk and started working on a new document. This time it wasn't code or systems analysis, but a detailed plan. First step, contact Maria Fernandez, a former university classmate who was now one of the most respected lawyers in corporate fraud cases in Madrid. While I was writing the email to Maria, my mind traveled to all the family gatherings at the Martinez house, where Dolores presided over the table like a queen and Miguel bragged about his important cases. How many of those career success stories were based on illicit activities? Don found me still working. He had prepared a complete dossier, evidence of illegal activities, records of suspicious transfers, compromising emails. All organized so that any investigator could follow the trail of money and connections. I had also prepared a contingency plan for my company. If I was going to take on the Martinez family, I needed to make sure Tech Valencia Solutions was protected. I spent the next few hours on video conferences with my management team, making sure every aspect of the business was legally protected. At 9 a.m, when the sun was already bathing the streets of Valencia, I received a response from Maria. "Carmen, I just reviewed the documentation you sent me. This is bigger than you imagine. Can we meet in person? I'll take the First Avenue to Valencia." As I responded confirming the meeting, I couldn't help but think of the look on Dolores' face when she found out that her mere daughter-in-law had been one step ahead the entire time. But this wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice, about unmasking years of illegal activities that had allowed the Martinezes to maintain their privileged lifestyle. The doorbell rang just as I was finishing getting ready. It was Ana, my faithful friend, who came with coffee and churros from the Central Market. "Have you slept at all?" he asked, looking at the dark circles under his eyes that the makeup hadn't been able to completely hide. "Sleep is overrated," I replied, leading her toward the kitchen. "Besides, I have a lot to tell you." For the next hour, I explained everything: the company, the evidence against Miguel, the plan that was taking shape. Ana listened with a mixture of amazement and pride. "I always knew you were more than what they saw," he finally said, squeezing my hand. "But this is incredible, Carmen. The amazing thing is that it took me so long to realize my own worth," I responded, feeling determination growing inside me. "But that's over. It's time for everyone to see who I really am." I spent the rest of the day preparing for the meeting with Maria. Every document, every piece of evidence, every piece of the puzzle I had been putting together for the last year, everything had to be perfect. Because when I decided to move my chips, there would be no turning back. As I organized the last details, I remembered Dolores' words: "I always knew you weren't enough for my son." She would soon discover how wrong she had been. Because while she belittled me, I had quietly built an empire, and now that empire would be the instrument of my justice. 2 days after Dolores's revealing call, I was sitting in La Pepica, one of the most emblematic restaurants on Valencia's seafront. The place, famous for its paella and its view of the Mediterranean, had witnessed countless family meals with the Martinezes. Now it would be the scene of my confrontation with Miguel. I arrived early deliberately, choosing a discreet table in the corner overlooking the sea. Maria, my lawyer, had advised me to meet in a public but quiet place. "Stay calm and controlled," he had told me during our meeting the day before. "Let him speak first, watch his reactions." The waiter, Paco, who knew us well from our previous visits, approached with a worried expression. "Is everything okay, Mrs. Carmen? We haven't seen Mr. Miguel here for days." "Everything is about to get better, Paco," I responded with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. A black coffee, please. And still water. While I waited, I mentally reviewed the documentation I had in my briefcase, copies of compromising emails, records of suspicious bank transfers, photographs of clandestine meetings. All carefully organized and backed up in multiple secure locations. At 12 o'clock, Miguel entered the restaurant. He was wearing his usual gray Hugo Boss suit and carrying his Italian leather briefcase, the perfect image of the successful lawyer. However, I noticed something different about his face, a tension in his jaw, a nervous glint in his eyes. "Carmen," he greeted dryly, sitting across from me. "I hope this is brief. I have an important meeting this afternoon. More important than discussing the end of our 6-year marriage?" I asked, keeping a neutral tone. "Or perhaps as important as your meetings with Mr. Rodriguez in the parking lot of the El Sailor shopping center?" The color left his face for a moment, so briefly that someone who didn't know him well might have missed it. But I knew him, I knew every one of his gestures, every little tick that betrayed his nervousness. "I don't know what you're talking about," he replied, trying to maintain his composure. "If you have summoned me here to make baseless accusations." "Unfounded?" I interrupted, opening my briefcase with deliberate slowness. "How are you doing?" I slid a photograph across the table, him and Mr. Rodriguez exchanging documents in a secluded part of the marina. "You've been spying on me," he hissed, his mask of indifference beginning to crack. "No, Miguel. I've been protecting myself. Like any intelligent person would do when they notice their husband is involved in suspicious activities." Paco came over with my coffee and water. Miguel ordered a whiskey, something he never did before the afternoon. When the waiter walked away, I continued, "You know, for years I wondered why you were so insistent that I not get involved in your affairs at the firm. It's complicated," you said. "Don't worry about those things. Now I understand why." I pulled more documents out of my briefcase, printed emails, account statements, call logs. I placed them on the table one by one, like a dealer dealing cards in a decisive game. "Do you want to talk about Operation Garden? Or do you want to explain to me why your firm has so many shell companies in the Cayman Islands?" Miguel took a long drink of his whiskey before answering. "You have no idea what you're getting into, Carmen. There are things it's better not to know." "Is that a threat?" I asked, leaning forward. "Because let me tell you something, Miguel, I am no longer the naive woman you knew. The one who was satisfied with your vague explanations and your mother's constant criticism." "My mother has nothing to do with this," he responded automatically, but I could see a flash of concern in his eyes. "Your mother has something to do with all this," I corrected. "You think I don't know she's aware of your activities? That I haven't noticed how the topic changes every time someone mentions the firm's finances at family dinners?" I pulled out my phone and played the recording of my conversation with Dolores. Miguel's expression darkened when he heard his mother's voice mocking me. "This is just the tip of the iceberg," I continued. "I have copies of everything, every email, every transfer, every suspicious meeting. And they are in safe hands. If anything happens to me, if you or your family try something against me, everything will come to light." "What do you want?" he finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "What do I want?" I repeated, allowing myself a small smile. "I want you to know exactly who you've been messing with. That simple consulting employee that your mother despises so much. She's the CEO of Tech Valencia Solutions. Yes, the same company that turns over millions a year and that is revolutionizing the technology sector in the region." I watched as his eyes widened with surprise and understanding. "Impossible," he murmured. "Impossible? How was it impossible for your perfect family to be involved in illegal activities?" I took a sip of my coffee, which had already gone cold. "The difference, Miguel, is that my company is. Completely legitimate. Every euro is declared, every contract is legal. Silence stretched between us, broken only by the sound of the waves and the distant conversations of other diners. Miguel seemed to have aged 10 years in the last few minutes. "Are you going to report me?" he finally asked. "That's up to you," I replied. "I want a clean and fair divorce. I want you and your family to leave me alone. And I want adequate compensation for these years of lies and manipulation." "Are you blackmailing me?" "No, Miguel. I'm giving you a chance to do the right thing for once in your life. More than you gave me when you decided to end our marriage over the phone." I took out one last document from my briefcase, the divorce agreement that Maria had prepared. "My terms are reasonable, considering what's at stake. You have until tomorrow to review it with your attorney and sign it. What if I refuse? Then we will find out together how long it takes the anti-corruption prosecutor's office to investigate a case like this." I stood up, collecting the documents from the table. "Oh, and one more thing. Tell your mother that napkins are folded according to the occasion, not according to her whims." As I walked out of the restaurant, I felt his gaze on my back. The sound of my heels on the wooden floor marked the rhythm of my victory. On the promenade, the Valencian sun shone brightly, as if celebrating this moment with me. Ana was waiting for me at a nearby cafe, as we had agreed. Seeing me enter, he jumped up. "How did it go?" he asked, searching my face. "Exactly as we planned," I replied, finally allowing myself to relax my shoulders. "You should have seen his face when I showed him the evidence." "What now?" "Now we wait. You have 24 hours to sign the agreement. If you don't..." I left the sentence hanging in the air. "Do you think he will?" "It will," I responded with certainty. Miguel may be many things, but he is not stupid. He knows that I have everything it takes to destroy not only his career, but the reputation of his entire family. As we shared a bottle of cava to celebrate, I couldn't help but think about how things had changed in just a few days. From being the belittled wife to having total control of the situation. "By the way," Ana added with a smile, "I have been reviewing the comments on the social networks of Tech Valencia Solutions. People are fascinated with your last financial management platform." "The irony does not escape me," I replied, laughing. "While they use technology to hide money, I use it to help companies be more transparent and efficient." The rest of the day I spent it in my office, finally revealing my true identity to my team. Until then, he had directed the company mainly remotely, using a pseudonym in most communications. The surprise and admiration on his faces confirmed that I had made the right decision to keep my business life secret during all these years. That night, while contemplating the city from my balcony, I received a message from Mary. "Miguel has contacted his lawyer. They want to meet tomorrow to review the agreement." I smiled, knowing that the battle was practically won. But this was not the end, but the beginning of a new stage in my life. A stage in which I would not have to hide or reduce myself to make others happy. The next morning he dawned with a headline that shook the quiet breakfast of the Valencian high society: "Prestigious law firm investigated for alleged millionaire fiscal fraud." The article, published in the Las Provinces newspaper, did not mention specific names, but anyone who knew the legal environment of Valencia knew exactly who it was. I was in my office in Tech Valencia Solutions, contemplating the city from the 15th floor of a modern building on Avenida de France, when notifications began to arrive. The article was sharing as gunpowder on social networks, and the WhatsApp groups of the city practically spoke. Laura, my development director, entered the office with her tablet in hand. "Carmen, this is incredible. The article already has more than 5,000 shared on Twitter, and comments, well, you should see them for yourself." I had the device and began to read the comments on social networks. People speculated, shared rumors, connected points. Some even mentioned previous cases in which Miguel's firm had been involved, cases that were now seen under a new light. "Have you had news from Miguel?" Laura asked, sitting in front of my desk. "Not yet," I replied, returning the tablet. "But it won't take long." His mother, on the other hand. As if my words had invoked her, my phone began to vibrate. It was Payne. "Have you become completely crazy?" His voice sounded hysterical, far from his usual controlled and condescending tone. "Do you have an idea of what you have done?" "Good morning too, Dolores," I replied calmly. "I see that you have read the newspaper. This is defamation. We will sue you." "Defamation?" I allowed myself a small laugh. "Dolores, dear, so that something is a defamation, it has to be false. And you and I know that every word of that article is true. Although, technically, I did not write it. You will destroy this family." "No, Dolores. You destroyed this family when you decided that I was not enough, when they planned behind my back, when they treated me like a lower for 6 years. I am only letting the truth come to light." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. When Dolores spoke again, his voice trembled. "What do you want? Money? Is that?" "What I want, Dolores, I already have it, my dignity back. And justice, of course. The justice that your child and you presumed to defend as they dedicated themselves to illegal activities." I hung the phone and turned to Laura, who had witnessed the entire conversation. "Could you ask Ricardo to go up? We need to review the presentation for the press conference this afternoon." The news that the CEO of Tech Valencia Solutions would give a press conference had generated expectation in the local technological sector. Until now, the company had maintained a discreet profile, and its mysterious founder rarely appeared in public. At 5 in the afternoon, the audit hall of the Westin Hotel, in the center of Valencia, was full of local journalists and businessmen. From the little dressing room where I prepared, I could hear the murmur of the crowd. Anna had come to give me moral support. "Are you sure this?" he asked while helping me to adjust my navy blue blazer. "I've never been safer in my life," I replied, checking my makeup. "One last time. It's time for Valencia to know the true story." When I went on stage, the flash of the cameras received me as a storm of light. I placed myself after the podium and watched the audience. In the front row, I recognized several family faces of the Valencian business world. I also saw some friends of the Martinez family, those who had looked at me over my shoulder in social events. "Good afternoon," I started, my clear and firm voice. "My name is Carmen Ferrer, and I am the founder and CEO of Tech Valencia Solutions. For years, I have maintained my identity in reserve for reasons that I will share with you today." During the next hour, I told my story. I did not directly mention Miguel or his family, but each person in that room understood the references. I talked about building a company from scratch while facing contempt and underestimation. About how the Valencian technological sector needed more transparency and business ethics. Our new financial management platform, I announced, is specifically designed to help small and medium enterprises to maintain their transparent accounts and in order. Because we believe that business success should not be at odds with ethics. The questions of the journalists were direct and scathing. Did I know the illegal activities of the Muping Martinez when I developed this platform? Was this my way of avenging my former political family? Did he have evidence of the accusations that circulated in the press? I handled each question with diplomacy and precision, as Maria had advised me. "I'm not here to talk about other companies or people," I replied. "I am here to present a technological solution that will help prevent fraud and corruption in our business sector." While talking, I saw several former friends of Miguel leave the room discreetly. His expressions were a mixture of shock and concern. Without a doubt, many of them were involved in the same fraudulent schemes. The press conference ended with a surprise ad, Tech Valencia Solutions would donate 10% of its annual benefits to technological education programs for entrepreneurs. Because every woman deserves the opportunity to demonstrate her true potential, I concluded, looking directly at the camera. When I got off the stage, my phone was already saturated with lost messages and calls. Among them, there was one from Miguel: "We need to talk. This is getting out of control. Do you want to talk now?" I replied by message. How curious. A few days ago, a phone call seemed enough to finish our marriage. That night, while having dinner with Ana in my favorite restaurant in El Carmen, the afternoon news showed images of agents of the anti-corruption prosecutor entering the offices of the Martín Martínez. Miguel's face, trying to cover the cameras while leaving the building, occupied the screen. "How do you feel?" Ana asked, serving more wine. "Liberated," I replied after a moment of reflection. As if I could finally breathe after being containing breath for 6 years. My phone vibrated again. This time it was a message from Dolores: "You have destroyed my son. Are you satisfied?" "No, Dolores," I wrote in response. "Your son was destroyed only when he decided to follow the path of illegality. I only turned on the lights so that everyone could see it." The following days were a whirlwind of interviews, meetings, and new contracts for Tech Valencia Solutions. Our financial management platform became an immediate success, especially among companies that wanted to demonstrate their commitment to transparency. A week after the press conference, I received an invitation to give a talk at the University of Valencia on women's entrepreneurship and business ethics. The same university where years ago, professors like Dolores had made me feel that I did not belong to the business world. Life has a curious way to go around, I told Laura while preparing the presentation. "Do you know what is best of all this?" she responded with a smile. "That your success is not based on destroying others, but on building something valuable and ethical." Laura's words resonated in my mind for days. He was right, my revenge had not been to destroy Martínez, but to demonstrate that it could succeed in business without compromising integrity. The latest news I received about the family was through a headline in the newspaper: "Prestigious law firm is declared in creditors' competition." The photo showed the building where I had dinner with the family so many times, now with a "rent" poster on its facade. Dolores had stopped appearing in the social events of the city. According to rumors, he had moved to a more modest house on the outskirts. Miguel, on the other hand, faced an investigation that would probably end his career. "Do you regret something?" Ana asked me one afternoon, while we walked through the Turia Gardens. I looked at the Valencian sky, as blue and bright as ever. "I regret not having trusted my value before. I had allowed me to make me feel less for so long. But everything else was exactly as it should be." 6 months had passed since that press conference that changed everything. Valencia was still Valencia, with its Mediterranean light and its honey body eternally blue, but my world was completely different. I had moved to an attic in the City of Arts and Sciences, a bright and modern space that perfectly reflected my new life. That Sunday morning, while enjoying my coffee on the terrace with a view to the emblematic Calatrava building, I mentally reviewed everything that had changed. Tech Valencia Solutions had become one of the most respected technology companies in Spain, not only for our innovative products, but for our commitment to transparency and business ethics. The bell rang, interrupting my thoughts. Era Ana, who came to breakfast like every Sunday for months. "I bring horchata from Alborea," he announced, showing a bottle of the traditional Valencian drink. "And fartuns, of course. Horchata cannot be taken without fartuns." While we were preparing breakfast in the kitchen, Ana bajaba the newspaper he had brought. "Have you seen this?" he asked, pointing to small news in the society section. "Miguel has moved to Madrid. Apparently, he has achieved work in a small law firm." "Well for him," I sincerely replied. The resentment that had ever felt had become a kind of compassionate indifference. At least he is trying to rebuild his life honestly. And Dolores? Have you known anything about her? I nodded while serving the horchata in high vessels. Maria told me that she is giving private classes to subsist. Quite ironic, considering how she used to show off her chair at the university. The mentoring program for entrepreneurs who had started in Tech Valencia Solutions was giving its first fruits. That week, 5 startups led by women had achieved financing thanks to our network of contacts and support. Do you know what is the most rewarding? I told Anna while we sat on the terrace. See how other women are finding their voice and power. Many of them have stories similar to mine, people who belittled them, who made them feel small. You have become a reference, Anna observed. Last week, one of my students made a presentation on you in class. The businesswoman who transformed humiliation into success, he titled her work. I smiled, remembering my own student days. Life has a curious way to go around. Do you remember when Dolores told me that I would never understand the business world? The sound of a notification interrupted our conversation. It was a Laura email, my development director, sending me the final draft of our new project, an artificial intelligence platform designed to detect fraud patterns in business transactions. This is going to revolutionize the sector, I said, showing the mail to Anna. Imagine how many companies like Miguel's firm could be detected before causing harm. Speaking of damage, said Anna, have you thought about writing a book about your experience? I could help many people who are going through similar situations. The idea had crossed my mind several times. Maybe, I replied. But first I want to make sure Tech Valencia Solutions is solidly established as a leader in his sector. I spent the afternoon in my new hobby, painting classes in a small study in the Carmen neighborhood. It was an activity that I had always wanted to try, but that Dolores had ruled out as not appropriate for someone from our social position. Now, each brushstroke was an act of freedom, a declaration of independence. My phone vibrated with a message from Maria, my lawyer and now close friend. Have you seen the news? The prosecutor's office has officially closed the case against the Muping Martinez. Miguel has accepted a collaboration agreement in exchange for a reduced sentence. I stared at the message for a long moment. It was the definitive closure of a chapter of my life. Poetic justice, I finally replied. That night, I organized a small dinner at home. In addition to Anna, I invited Laura and some of the women of the mentoring program. The terrace was filled with laughs and animated conversations while sharing paella and red wine. Do you know what I have learned from all this? I said while serving the dessert, a homemade orange cake. That success has nothing to do with revenge or with demonstrating something to those who belittled you. It has to do with being faithful to yourself and using your power to help others. For freedom, Anna gave, raising her cup. And for women who dare to be themselves. For freedom, we all respond in unison. The following months were an activity whirlwind. Tech Valencia Solutions expanded to Madrid and Barcelona. Our mentoring program became a model to follow, and we began to receive requests from all over Spain. One day, as I walked through the central market making the purchase, I found face to face with Miguel's sister. He was paralyzed to see me, as if he had seen a ghost. Carmen, he murmured, visibly uncomfortable. I didn't know you kept living in the neighborhood. Actually, I just moved back, I replied with a quiet smile. I miss the smells and flavors of the market. There was an awkward moment of silence before she spoke again. You know, I never agreed with how my mother and Miguel treated you. I should have said something. The past is past, I replied, selecting some mature oranges. The important thing is that we have all learned and grown. That night, while preparing a light dinner in my kitchen, I reflected on that meeting. There was a time when the mere thought of meeting a member of the Martinez family would have caused me anxiety. Now, I could maintain a civilized conversation without my heart accelerating. The night news program presented a report on the growing number of women in leadership positions in the Spanish technological sector. Tech Valencia Solutions was mentioned as an example to follow, and used fragments of my press conference 6 months ago. The true revolution in the business world, they summoned me saying, it will not come from technology itself, but how we choose to use it. To oppress or to empower, to hide or to transparent, to exclude or to include. My phone rang with a text message. It was an unknown number, but I recognized the style immediately. You were right. Above all. I'm sorry. I did not respond to Miguel's message. There was no need. Our lives had taken completely different paths, and I was at peace with that. The following week, I gave a talk at a technology congress in Barcelona. During the question session, a young student raised her hand. What advice would you give to someone who is being belittled in their professional or personal environment? Asked. I took a moment before answering. The best advice I can give is that you never allow the negative opinions of others to define your value. Your worth is not determined by what others think about you, but for what you know you are able to do. And above all, remember that success is the best answer to those who doubted you. That night, back in Valencia, I sat on my terrace to contemplate the illuminated city. The old buffet building was barely visible in the distance, now occupied by a renewable energy startup. Life had taken a complete turn. If the daughter-in-law had become a respected businesswoman and a model to follow for other women. But the most important thing was not the professional success or satisfied revenge, but the freedom I had found to be myself. I took my tablet and started writing, Dear I from the past, it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to feel small sometimes. But never, never let anyone convince you that you are less than you really are. It was the beginning of the book that Anna had suggested to write. It would not be a story of revenge, but of empowerment. Not of destruction, but of construction. Not hate, but of growth. Because in the end, true freedom is not to make others feel small, but to help everyone grow together.